On October 7, 1963, the city of Selma, Alabama first had its Freedom Day. Freedom Day was to promote black people to register to vote. The town of Selma was 57% black with only 1% able to vote. The SNCC and the DCVL leaders decided to organize a major mobilization, an all-out effort to get as many potential black voters as possible down to the courthouse. Starting at 9, there were more than 100 black people waiting to register. By 11:40, there were more than 300 people in line, and they were being threatened by police for blocking the sidewalk. Only 12 people have entered the courthouse. By 2, they are being threatened by the police that anyone who tries to talk or give water or food to the line will be arrested for molesting the voter applicants. By 4:30, hundreds are waiting, hungry and thirsty, and the courthouse closes for the day.
He's got supporters. Detroit, New York, Los Angeles, inciting large-scale arrests and sympathy marches.
I'm very aware of that, Mr.
Hoover.
What I do know is he's nonviolent. What I need to know right now, what's Martin Luther King about to do next?
Mr. President, Dr. King is here.
Mr. President, in the South, there have been thousands of racially motivated murders. We need your help.
Dr. King, this thing's just gonna have to wait.
It cannot wait.
You got one big issue, I got 101.
Summer it is.
Here is the next great battle.
Selma's the place, and they ready.
Dr. King!
I tell you, that white boy can hit.
You will not tolerate agitators attempting to orchestrate a disturbance in this state.
We must march. We must stand up.
You march those people into rural Alabama, it's gotta be open season.
May I have a word?
There's no word to be had.
The people. The people. The people. The people. The people.
There are 70 million people watching.
These pictures are going around the world.
We must make a massive demonstration.
White, black, and otherwise. Come to Selma.
I heard about the attack of innocent people. I couldn't just stand by.
Looks like an army out there.
This revolution goes on and on. This revolution goes on and on.
Mine eyes have seen the glory, 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 hallelujah.
What happens when a man stands up, says enough is enough?
MLK led a 5-day, 54-mile march where the SNCC and the SCLC campaigned for voting rights. SCLC chose to focus on Selma because of anticipated brutality of police under Jim Clark to try to pressure Lyndon B. Johnson in Congress to enact new voting right laws. This was very nonviolent in the first month, but in February police attacks increased. On February 18th, when police tried to break up a group of nonviolent protesters with force, a state trooper shot Jimmy Lee Jackson, a 26-year-old church deacon, as he attempted to protect his mother from the trooper's nightstick. Jackson died 8 days later. The march from Selma to Montgomery was in reaction of Jimmy Lee Jackson's death. They set out on March 7th. When King and the marchers reached Edmund Pettus Bridge, police officers met them with tear gas and proceeded to beat them before a national television audience. The day of the march has been since named Bloody Sunday. That night of the final rally, while ferrying Selma demonstrators back home from Montgomery, Viola Liuzzo was shot and killed by 4 members of the Ku Klux Klan.
Congress and President Lyndon Johnson passed the Voting Rights Act of 1965, also named the Civil Rights Act of 1965. This act outlawed mechanisms whites had used to disqualify black voters for nearly a century. Congress also passed the Civil Rights Act of 1964, bringing an end to Jim Crow in public accommodations and employment, and reaffirmed the congressional commitment to school desegregation. This all set the path for many years to come. As the U.S. entered World War I in 1917, Congress established a new system of veterans benefits, including programs for disability compensation, insurance for service personnel and veterans, and vocational rehabilitation for the disabled. In World War II, the GI Bill was signed into law on June 22, 1944.
The VA is not being given sufficient funding to meet the demand for the care, proper medical or physiological evaluation, and counseling for our veterans. More than 1.9 million people are now veterans, and nearly 1.2 million have obtained VA healthcare services, with more than 57% receiving a mental health diagnosis, which includes PTSD, depressive disorders, or alcohol or drug dependence. It is estimated that 11 to 20% of Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, up to 12% of Gulf War veterans, and about 30% of Vietnam veterans have experienced PTSD, which is linked to other psychiatric conditions, substance use disorders, unemployment, and homelessness. Between 2005 and 2014, the number of veterans who received mental health care from the VA grew by 71%. The number of mental health encounters and treatment visits increased from 10.5 million in 2005 to 19.6 million in 2014, an 87% increase. It has been noted that timely care and early intervention can improve veterans' quality of life, prevent chronic illness and suicide, promote recovery, and minimize the long-term disabling effects of chronic mental health care problems. An example of this is Thomas Young, who was found on July 23, 2015, after being struck by a metro train outside of Chicago. He attempted calling the Department of Veterans Affairs suicide hotline in, but no one picked up the phone. He attempted calling the Department of Veterans Affairs suicide hotline, but no one picked up the phone. Afterwards, he lay down on the nearby tracks and awaited his death.